From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
All right. Good morning, security gang. Welcome to another episode of the CyberHub Podcast. It's Monday, June 9th, 2025. So I'll just be really upfront. I'm pre-recording this episode because as this episode airs, I'll be making my way to the Teammate CISO Village down south. So the rest of the episodes this week will all be coming from the Teammate CISO Village. I'm looking forward to it. So I'm pre-recording the show here. It's Sunday night, but a lot to talk about on this morning's show, including the big news. I've been very critical of President Trump and the kind of strategy around cybersecurity. And an executive order dropped right after our show on Thursday. We're going to get into what that executive order means with so much more geopolitical news here on this morning's show. So before we do that, I've got myself, because I'm pre-recording the show and it is Sunday night, I want to get my 7 hours of sleep. I've got a decaf Lavazza double espresso. Now, do I typically take decaf? No, I don't. Do I enjoy decaf? Not really. I'm a very caffeine heavy person. I enjoy 2 to 3 to 4 of these a day. Give me some Bai. That's caffeinated coconut water. If y'all don't know it, it's really good too. I'm a caffeine addict. But because I do want to get my 7 hours, and I've been known whenever I do the show, my energy level goes up to like through 25. It's very hard to bring it down to like a 2 or 3 is where I need it to be out of 10 in order to go to sleep. So I've got decaf this morning. A long explanation. Coffee cup cheers, y'all. So we kick off with President Donald J. Trump issuing a brand new and kind of amending Executive Orders 13694 and 14144, sustaining select efforts to strengthen the nation's cyber security. So there's a whole lot to it. Let me give you the breakdown. First, they're calling out China by name as America's biggest cyber threat. They do that alongside Russia, Iran, and North Korea. This is no longer diplomacy speaking here, folks. It's a direct acknowledgement that we're in a cyber Cold War by the Trump White House. But here's what matters more than rhetoric. The order sets aggressive deadlines for 3 game-changing requirements in cybersecurity. 1, the post-quantum cryptography by 2030. Now, there's been a lot of confusion around it. I've been confused myself. The Biden White House, kind of towards the end of their reign, said by 2032, 2035. Then they said 2027. Now, post-quantum cryptography by 2030. AI-powered cyber defenses start now. And a new cyber standard for everything from software to smart devices. Let's get into the quantum side of it, because this is where science fiction meets national security, where a lot of us have really talked about this. You build a strong enough quantum computer, and experts say it's not when, it's if. It could break today's encryption instantly. Now, am I, as a CISO, worried about this? Not so much. I mean, government secrets, for those who don't know, government doesn't use standard AES-256 encryption. Anyone who's ever done any job in government knows the NSA develops their own cryptographic algorithms. So does CIA. So do so many others, including the State Department. They're not using traditional AES-256 encryption. The threat here specifically is on enterprise, not so much government, but quantum computing could break a lot of those there. The order mandates that all federal agencies transition to a quantum-resistant encryption by 2030. In government time, this is really fast, by the way, folks. That's 4.5 years. They're also requiring agencies to identify which quantum-safe products are available by December of this year. And here's why you should care. Companies selling to government will now need to offer quantum-safe products. The demand is going to drive innovation and eventually make them a standard. The order also is weaponizing AI for cyber defense. The government has opened up classified cybersecurity data sets to academic researchers and requiring AI vulnerabilities to be treated like traditional cyber attacks. Think of it my way here. Instead of a human analyst trying to spot threats in millions of networks, AI is going to do it faster and at scale. But if someone hacks the AI doing your defense, this becomes a critical vulnerability itself. And here's what changes for business and consumers. Here's what you should think about. Starting in 2027, any Internet of Things device sold to the federal government needs a cyber trust mark, basically a security set of approval. That's not new. The cyber trust mark has kind of started getting around last year. That was something the Trump administration started, the Biden administration adopted. It's where we saw bipartisanship really come into play was really around cybersecurity from Trump to Biden, now back to President Trump. So at least we've seen this pattern really excel here for business. This is a new compliance requirement, especially if you sell technology to the government. For consumers, it's going to mean more secure devices. But here comes the challenges. One, the timeline is really aggressive, maybe too aggressive, and post-quantum cryptography standards are still being finalized. There's about 3 or 4 standards set by NIST, but they're not really new cryptography. They're rather kind of new key exchange methods. AI is evolving rapidly. Obviously, the CISO village for Teammate AI is top of mind. So I hope to walk away on Friday being a lot smarter when it comes to AI than I am today. That's my expectation walking into the CISO village here. There's no clear funding mechanisms for how to do this. And by the way, this is where I kind of have an issue. This depends on Congress providing funding. And we have a Trump administration that's trying to cut funding unilaterally across all these agencies. CISA, I reported this on the Thursday show, lost 1,000 employees since the beginning of the year. I get these are fancy pieces of words on a fancy piece of paper with the signature of the most powerful man in the world, President Donald J. Trump. I also want to see action. And the one thing I miss in this EO is any sort of enforcement mechanism. Meaning, if this doesn't happen, then this would be the consequence. Instead, it seems like another government document that's designed to kind of set something, but it's an executive order. It's not adopted by Congress, meaning that in 2028, whoever the new president will be, and we'll have a new president in 2028 because President Trump will be termed out, and this will be an open election. I think the first time since 2008, folks, that we'll have an open election, and that was the Obama race against McCain, and then from that, we have not had really an open convention. An open election on both sides of the aisle. So there's that. Is quantum really going to keep me up at night? Nope. Sorry, I'm not losing sleep over quantum computing. And some of you may go like, why? And I'll tell you why. It's really, really easy for me to explain. The quantum threat over decrypting existing data, the steal now, decrypt later, yes, it's a threat. But it's not where compliance has taken me today. And because the enforcement is only on federal agency, it doesn't apply to consumer businesses either. So that's the big one there as well. But it's good to have some direction, and it's good to call out our adversaries. So those are the positives here. And obviously, you can read the whole executive order in our show notes, and I'll have a TLDR on cyberhubpodcast.com later today. You can catch it there as well. But let's stick to China here, because this executive order calls China out directly, and that's only going to empower more and more of these types of stories to come out where China is going to get the finger pointed at them. And this is going to be huge. India, don't blow this opportunity. Cybersecurity investigators are noticing a highly unusual software crash that was affecting a small number of smartphones belonging to people who worked in government, politics, tech, and journalism. The crashes began late last year, carried into 2025, where a tip-off of a sophisticated cyber attack may have allowed attackers to infiltrate a phone without even a single click from the user. Citizens Lab in Canada, care about this one? Or is it because it's not Israeli, you don't care at all about spyware or governments accessing devices of journalists, politicians, and activists? I don't know. Citizens Lab's awfully silent here. Hypocrites. The attackers left no clues about their identities, but investigators at iVerify noticed that all victims had one thing in common. They worked in fields of interest for the Chinese government, and they've been targeted by Chinese attackers in the past. This is becoming an increasingly new way for attackers to go after mobile devices and the apps they use as a weak link in U.S. cyber defenses. Groups linked to China's military and intelligence have targeted the smartphones of prominent Americans. And again, this is primarily going about this. So we know the telecom attack here is significant. We haven't gone all the details yet, but there is a whole bunch there. U.S. intelligence officials have said China poses a significant, persistent threat. And just like I mentioned earlier, the new executive order from President Trump names China as an adversary. We are in a cyber cold war, whether you like it or not. And so now we're seeing these mobile devices, as more and more of the lives become there, they become more and more of a target. And so that's something to really pay attention to. I've often talked about the battlefield, and when the battlefield becomes from cyber weapons become used in cyber crime, but wiper malware is still a thing in the Russia-Ukraine war. Wiper attacks against Ukraine started back in January and February of 2022 when the war kicked off, but they continue to escalate as Russia's intensifying its activities in cyberspace. The attacks here, from a report coming from Cisco Talos, is showing that a new type of wiper malware was taken and hitting the critical infrastructure systems in Ukraine. This one called Path Wiper. The new malware shared similarities with the Hermetic Wiper. It was attributed to Sandstorm, or also known as Seashell. Can we get just one name? Sandworm. That's it. That's what we're calling them. Sandworm. Both wipers, Talos explained that the attackers target the master boot record and the NTFS-related artifacts for corruption, albeit the mechanisms differ. Path Wiper seeks all connected drives and volumes, identifies volume labels, and documents valid records, while the old Hermetic Wiper simply enumerated physical drives from 0 to 100. As part of the Path Wiper attack, a legitimate endpoint administrative framework was used to execute malicious commands to deploy the wiper. The attackers then used file names and actions mimicking those of the utility council. Any commands issued by the administrative tools council were received by its client running on the endpoint. The client then executed the command as a batch file, and when the command line partially resembling that of an M packet command's execution through such commands do not necessarily indicate the presence of an M packet in the environment according to Talos. And then when the wiper attempted to dismount volumes and replace contents of the file system artifacts with random data using one thread per drive and volume for each identified path, targeted artifacts included the MBR, the MFT, and so much more. Again, this is going to be in our environment in a year or two. Prep for it. A threat actor has re-released data from the 2021 AT&T breach that affected 70 million customers. AT&T believes that this is just a rehashing of old data and not any sort of new leaks. Again, it's not uncommon for criminals to repackage previously disclosed data for financial gain. According to AT&T, that's what they're telling Bleeping Computer. It was first spotted by HackRead. The AT&T data was released on a popular Russian-speaking hacking forum where threat actors claim it was stolen during the 2024 AT&T Snowflake data theft attack, which exposed the call logs of 109 million customers. So Bleeping Computer analysis of the leak indicates that the data actually originated from the 2021 data breach and maybe just getting rehashed there for financial gain. Optima Tax Relief suffering a ransomware attack by the Chaos Ransomware Group, with now the threat actors leaking data from the company. Optima Tax is a U.S. tax resolution and settlement firm that helps individuals and businesses address and fixing federal and state income tax or state tax issues. The company claims to be the nation's leading tax resolution firm, having resolved nearly $3 billion in tax liabilities for customers. Today, the Chaos Ransomware Gang added Optima to its data leak site, claiming to have stolen 69 gigabytes worth of data. Chaos also have claimed to have breached the Salvation Army, which has not responded to queries last week either. A stray artifact in the TLS certificate led security researchers to discovering one scary and unnerving discovery. Hundreds of control room dashboards for U.S. water utilities were sitting a click away from the public internet. Dozens of them offered full, no-password controls over pumps, valves, and chemical feeds. A trail started last October when the research team at Census ran a routine scan of industrial control hosts and noticed certificates with the word SCADA embedded. That label, short for supervisory control and data acquisition, is typically associated with monitoring systems and ICS. Census found the same certificate, distinguished name DN, across several instances of the uncommon browser, a browser-based HMI platform. The teams fetched screenshots from each IP address and found themselves staring at a live process graphic, from water treatment plants, from tank levels drifting up and down, to chlorine pumps cycling on and off, and alarms flashing in real time. Census said all systems were found in 3 states: authenticated, meaning credentials were required, read-only, viewable without control, and unnerving, unauthenticated, full access without any sort of credentials. Because the target were public utilities, Census skipped the usual slow one-by-one disclosure and sent the bulk report to the EPA and the unnamed HMI vendor. And then they started patching those up. According to the fact sheet from the EPA and CISA, exposed HMIs in water and wastewater systems could allow threat actors to access information about or tamper with ICS systems. So you have that there. The FBI is warning that the Bad Box 2.0 malware campaigns infected over 1 million home internet-connected devices, converting consumer electronics into residential proxies used for malicious activity. The Bad Box botnet is commonly found on Chinese Android-based smart TVs, streaming boxes, projectors, tablets, and IoT devices. You know that, AliExpress crap you order for dirt cheap. This is what happens to it. The Bad Box 2.0 botnet consists of millions of infected devices and maintains numerous backdoors to proxy services that criminal actors exploit by either selling or providing free access to compromised home networks to be used for various criminal activities. Sometimes you're not the target, but you're essentially a waypoint in the attack vector. And so it's something to be mindful of. Whenever you see something that's cheap, that looks like it should replace something expensive, and they go, well, it's just without the label, you're paying for the brand. The biggest lie ever told to people was the reason you're paying more for something is because you're paying for the brand. There's some truth to it, but not all of it is true. Once these compromised IoT devices are connected to home networks, the infected devices are susceptible to becoming part of the Bad Box 2.0 botnet and residential proxy services known to be used for malicious activity. They use them for residential proxy networks, ad fraud, and credential stuffing. So that's the new FBI warning there. Researchers now flagged a supply chain attack targeting over a dozen packages associated with GlueStack to deliver malware. The malware introduced via a change to lib common JavaScript /index.js allows an attacker to run shell commands, take screenshots, and upload files to infected machines. Aikido Security told the Hacker News, stating these packages collectively account for nearly 1 million weekly downloads. The unauthorized access could then be used to perform various follow-on actions like mining crypto, stealing sensitive information, and even shutting down services. Aikido said the first package compromise was detected on June 6 at 9:33 p.m. GMT. The attack listed the packages with the affected versions below. We'll have these at cyberhubpodcast.com. You can see them all there if you're listening. And finally, the Keeling ransomware operation has recently joined attacks exploiting two Fortinet vulnerabilities that allow bypassing authentication on vulnerable devices and executing malicious code responsibly. Keeling also tracked as one name surfaced in August of 2022. There are ransomware as a service operation under the name Agenda. The victim list includes companies like Yangfeng, the automotive giant, and Lee Enterprises, Australia's court services, Victoria, and pathology service provider Synovis. The Synovis incidents impacted major NHS hospitals in London, forcing to cancel hundreds of appointments and operations. The threat actors are now actively exploiting FortiGate vulnerabilities CVE 2024-21762 and 555901 to deploy the ransomware attack. So if you haven't patched either one of those, you want to make sure you get those done now. That's it for our show today. We'll be back tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern. This week, I'll be at the Teammate CISO Village, so I'll be either pre-recording or doing it live based on our schedule, although I assume most of the week will be pre-recorded. That doesn't mean the quality won't be the same. It'll be much, much better. So go check it out there. Make sure to subscribe, follow, like, and follow us on cyberhubpodcast.com for all the latest there. Until then, have a great rest of your day, y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great week, and most importantly, y'all, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.